Upgrades.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another JVS movie review. Today, I'm reviewing a film that I saw literally close to 6.5 months ago at this point. And because I saw it at a film festival, I kind of forgot about it in a way. And that's not any mark on a film. It's just that film festival, you see so many films. But it's coming to be released this week in the theaters. And I thought, what better of a time than to drop a review of this film? And this film is called Rob Peace. And here's a quick synopsis. Raised by a devoted mother, a brilliant young man risks everything he's worked for to free his imprisoned father. And this is directed by Chiwetel Ejiofor. It stars J. Will. It stars Mr. Chiwetel Ejiofor. It stars Mary J. Blige. And it stars Camila Cabello. Now, this is based on a true story. It's a best-selling novel about Rob Peace and his life and everything that he went through that Chiwetel took and decided to make a film about. It's a best-selling book, so check it out if you have the opportunity to do so. So the film, almost to the T, kind of follows the narrative of the book as we are introduced to a very young Rob Peace as he's just hanging out with his dad, trying to go to a baseball game. His dad's car breaks down, and he just ends up on the stoop, hanging out with his dad and his friends, listening to the game. Like, the film really starts off by showing you the relationship between Rob and his father. Shortly after that, Rob's father is arrested for murder. And then that's when we see the trajectory of Rob's life change. He is, by all measures, a genius. He's a black kid who gets into an Ivy League school, flourishes every which way possible, but it's always questions about his dad, and it's always questions about if his dad is innocent. And that's a theme that goes throughout Rob's life, goes throughout this film, of him doing whatever he has to do to get his dad out of prison. And that's when some of the tropes in these type of films, because when you do make these biography films of someone coming through tragedy to show their life and then possibly going back towards a tragic end, especially for the novel, you know exactly how this goes for Rob. This film follows every trope of those. It does not even attempt to separate itself from those tropes at all. You do have Mr. J. Will, who plays Rob Peace, is really, really good in this film, in this role. But because of Rob's decision making, and it's kind of hard to judge it because it's still based off of a true story. And here, his decisions it's gonna confuse an audience as you're watching it, and it's gonna make you wonder why someone so smart would make some of the decisions that he does. And the whole time it's framed that he's making them in the pursuit of love. He's making it in pursuit of attempting to free his father. And in that premise, this movie works well. I think when it escapes outside of that premise, when it attempts to show other elements of Rob's life, I think it loses focus completely, even down to the elements of his mom, who's played by Mary J. Blige in this film. Even when you show those elements of that relationship, it just doesn't feel strong, or that it holds the weight of his relationship with his dad and what leads to the decision that Rob makes. Now, this is a very tragic story. That's the best way to put it. It's a tragic story here of someone with so much potential, but ends up putting himself in harm's way countless times to free his father. And again, with that being the theme going throughout this entire film, even when it feels like Rob reaches a goal, because there's a certain point, an aspect of the story where we think that maybe Rob is going to get the conclusion that he wants and that he's thriving for, and then you see it go left. And when it goes left, we see exactly how Rob was now rebound his life after that, and the effects of that situation going left, how it just changes everything for Rob. When you get to those elements of it, because it's still kind of connected to his dad, it feels so real, and it feels like you're engrossed into this young man's story. And again, it's it's based solely off the point that Jay Will's performance is so strong in this film that you believe everything that Rob is going through. You feel all the emotions. Granted, it is a love story attached to this film, and that's where Camilla comes into play here. That is highly unnecessary. Even if it's really a part of his story, that love, it just felt so unnecessarily thrown in. And it's not, again, because it is part of his story, but it just felt like it could have been something you could have cut out because it's the weakest part of the film when you try to incorporate that element of his life into it. Even down to the element of his life of schooling. Like, we see him in school, but all we see him do really in school is kind of study and sell drugs. Like, those are the two counterbalances we kind of see him in school. It would have been nice if the film, which breezes by at, like, I think it's about an hour and 50 minutes, it kind of breezes past that time frame where you kind of feel like you need to see more, especially more of him in school, because I think the student aspect of Rob is the most interesting part. Again, he was a genius, and the stuff he was doing in school was amazing. And if you could have focused on that along with the fight to free his dad a little more, I think the story and the film could have been paced a little better behind that aspect of his life instead of the other focuses that you attempt to put it on here. I even would say, unfortunately, the dad storyline, which when the dad is played by the director of the film, it just feels like at times the dad story is interjected at points where we don't need it because we know what his end goal is. And because we know what his end goal is, we don't need some of the back and forth that we get, especially as Rob gets older, as we get with his father. Those elements feel completely unnecessary. But the film, while paced beautifully, shot wonderfully, it kind of drags a tad bit, and not in its pacing, but in the story. It felt like it just, if you're not going to focus on the element of the story that is the best part of the story, and you attempt to focus on the outside elements of the story, which is everything else Rob had to go through, especially after getting out of school and everything else he tried to pursue after that fact, I think that drags the story down. It's still paced well because it's still a quick film, but with those elements dragging it down, it kind of depresses you before the depressing ending that you kind of know that you're going to get here. That's the best element here. It's a well executed but not as well made version of a Fruitvale Station. Because I think most people are going to see this film and they're going to draw the parallels between the two. Not that one, not in the sense of the reasoning for the films. We understand what Fruitvale Station is, but with Rob Peace, a lot of what he goes through and even his tragic end is self-inflicted. So it's not necessarily that you feel injustice was done upon him. It's still a tragic story that you kind of know what the conclusion is going to get you. And because you're just waiting for that conclusion, and there's not too many upbeat moments in the film that takes you away from the trauma that is about to partake, it can either depress you or take you out completely because you're just waiting for the end to happen. And that is the only issue, but it's a huge issue with Rob Peace, is that we never really get to see Rob happy. And if you're telling me that at no points in his life was he ever happy, and that's why it was portrayed this way, by all means, then it's just not going to be an enjoyable watch. But I don't think that's it. I think the element was that they went for the melodramatic moments more in this film, and less of it was spent on the humanizing moments. Because it feels like throughout the film, as you're watching it, that Rob is just always racing to save his dad. Like, everything is that. And it almost feels like he really or rarely takes the time just to enjoy life. So if you want to paint a picture that freeing his dad was so cumbersome or just so engrossing for him that he didn't really focus on anything but that, you did a wonderful job of it. But unfortunately, in these type of films, you have to give happy moments to really pull the audience in here. Because even when we get to the emotional beats of the film, when we get to the third act of this film, when we even get to the emotional ending of the film, because I didn't necessarily get to see Rob ever enjoy life, it just didn't hit as hard as it should have the way his life ended. And I think that is, again, that's a huge problem with the film. While it's a small piece of the film, it's still a huge problem with the film, is that it just doesn't emotionally resonate the way it should have. But instead, you get a film that just feels like, okay, this is a nice biopic of a young man that possibly a lot of people don't know anything about. And from that standpoint, I think it can work. It's just that, again, it's extremely depressing of a film. And with those lack of moments to really draw you in emotionally, you're just going to be stuck just witnessing everything that's happening here. It's like walking into a crime scene or walking into a crime and you know no one there. And you see this traumatic thing happen, but there's no emotion for you because I don't know these people. And that's what it feels like in Rob Peace. Is that they didn't spend enough time getting to know Rob. We got to know his pursuit. We got to know the things he wanted to do, but we didn't get to know him. And that is the biggest issue with this film, is not getting to know Rob properly. But it still doesn't take away that this is still a solid film. So, Rob Peace, which I originally saw at the Sundance Film Festival, it is dropping in theaters this Friday. Out of a possible 10, I am going to give Rob Peace a 7.5 out of 10. I know everything I said, that's still a high score to give this film because this is still an executed film. It is still well shot, well directed. Jay Will, who plays Rob Peace, if ever there was a film to break through an actor, to put him at least on the spotlight where people understand who he is, this was that film. And that's kind of odd because it's coming from a huge show where he co-starred with Sylvester Stallone and Tulsa King. But here, it's him putting on a great performance. Absolutely great performance here. Throughout all the limitations that I mentioned about how it does not connect emotionally, his performance is still great. And that's what you're here for. Chiwetel's direction style is really good here. Again, it's a solidly made film. It just has its flaws. Because in this genre of film, you kind of want the films to go above what most people consider like a Lifetime film or a Saturday afternoon type of film, because that's the feel of this. It's really well made, but that's the feel of it because it never rises above that. But his performance is still really good in it, and it's definitely something you should check out. So, head out this weekend in theaters, check it out, let us know what you think. This has been another JVS movie review. Peace, people.